Hello and welcome back. So in the previous exercise, we built our first hands-on scenario, right? Where the customer is ordering something on the e-commerce portal and there was a requirement to pass the item details and quantity details to the ERP system's API, and we built the logic app to do that, right? Now there is another requirement, very similar requirement, and this is a very similar scenario to a real life scenario, right? That now that there is a new customer who is ordered on your e-commerce platform, so now you have a new customer in your system, and every customer information is stored in a CRM system. So every organization uses some or the other kind of CRM system to store their customer related data, right? So now the CRM system has a requirement to receive the customer details from the same order, right? So if you recollect, we received the XML in the order. Now from the same XML, we have to extract the customer details and we have to send it to the CRM system. And CRM system has also some sort of API and some sort of fixed format in JSON, right? So again, we have to do the exact same thing that we did for the ERP API, but this time we have to extract the customer related details. So let's go ahead and build this scenario again, right? So here on my screen, as you can see, instead of the item details, this time around we are looking for the customer details to be sent to the CRM system, right? So this was the original scenario, right? And instead of the ERP API, now we have the CRM API here, right? And customer has ordered something on the e-commerce portal. So let's see how we are going to do it, right? So if you remember, we've already built a logic app as an API, right? So the e-commerce portal is sending the entire order to the API that we've created using the logic app. So we're going to use the same logic app, right? And we added the transformation. We'll use the similar transformation, right? But this time, instead of the item details, we're going to use another transformation that would be for the CRM system specifics, right? Let's go ahead and see the actual message details, right? So on the left is the exact same order XML that we will be receiving from the e-commerce portal. But on the right, as you can see, this JSON message has different fields. So now instead of the item details, we have a JSON that requires the customer details, right? So it needs the customer name, and there are two addresses, a shipping address and a billing address, right? This is what they need. And so if we try and map this from the source message, which is on the left, right? Let's see how this is going to map out to. So the name is going to come from this first field of the shipping address, right? And then in the shipping address, there are four fields: street, city, state, and zip. So again, on the left, on the source message, we have two addresses, right? First is the shipping address and second is the billing address, right? And there are four exact same fields. So we just have to map them with the condition that when the address node has type equal to shipping, the name, street, city, state, and zip will be mapped. And then for the billing address, the exact same condition where type is equal to billing, map the street, city, state, and zip from that address block, right? So this is going to be the new mapping. So let's go ahead and hop onto the same logic app that we've created for the ERP system, right? Okay, so I'm on my Azure portal now, and on Azure portal, let's click on Logic Apps so that it can show us all of the logic apps that we've created so far. And the logic app that we created for the ERP system was Ecom portal to ERP items. Let's open that logic app in a new tab. And let's go ahead and click on Edit. All right, so here is the logic app that we created, right? This is the API request. This is where we would receive the order XML, and this HTTP block is where we actually called the ERP API, right? And this is where we did the mapping for the 4 required fields. And this is where we return the response of 200 OK to the e-commerce portal, right? So again, if you remember, we created another logic app as a sample API, sample ERP API, because we don't have the full environment right now, right? So in order to simulate the ERP API system, we created a logic app and we used that endpoint here, right? So now that we have another system, CRM system. So the CRM system also has an API, right? So let's go ahead and create another sample logic app that would also be a similar temporary API for us to use. And the easiest way to do that is, let's open the temporary ERP API and simply replicate that, right? So there is an option to clone that, the exact same API, right? Let's click on clone and let's change the name. So from ERP API temp, so this is going to be CRM API temp, and it is enabled status, right? Okay, let's wait until the deployment is complete. It's done. Let's go to the resource, let's click on edit, and let's get the endpoint URL for the CRM system. Okay, this is just to simulate the CRM API, right? Let's copy this and let's paste it here. So the first one was the ERP, and the second one is CRM API endpoint, right? Okay, so we'll use this in the original logic app for the interface. Okay, let's go to the original logic app. And so here, so if you think about the requirement, what we are supposed to do is, the request is going to be the same. We are receiving the exact same request, right? And rather than adding another request, we can use the exact same flow and just add another branch to that, right? So one branch will serve the ERP system and another branch will serve the CRM system, right? How do we do that? So here, if you go to this plus option, right, to add a new step, it would also give you an option to add a parallel branch. So that would create a parallel branch to this HTTP post request. Let's go ahead and click that. Let's see what happens. All right, so you see, we have another parallel branch because ERP system is a separate system and CRM is a separate system. So we can execute both of them in parallel, right? Let's add a parallel branch and let's select HTTP because CRM also has an API. Okay, and let's click on this HTTP. So here we need to configure this for the CRM system, right? Let's click on the post method. The URL is going to be, this is the URL that we just created. Again, this is the sample API, temporary API that we've created, right? And in the body, we know that this is the exact JSON format that CRM is asking their data into, right? So let's copy this and let's go back and paste that in the body. Okay, so this is the JSON that we need to create, and we need to now populate all of these fields here, right? We need to populate all of these fields. Now, going back to the lessons learned here, we used the Xpath, right? So now we need to find the Xpath of all of these fields. For Xpath, we use the Dan Sharp XML viewer. So this tool helps us define the XPath, find the XPath of any particular field in the XML, right? And we've already opened the order XML in this tool. All right, so let's go ahead and create this JSON with all of the required data, right? So the first one is name, Okay, let's go to the XML viewer, and for the name we needed to select the shipping name, right? So let's click on this shipping and let's click on this name in the address where the type is shipping. Let's click on this name. That would give you the XPath of the name value, right? Let's copy this and let's paste it here, but we also need to use a string so that we only get the value, and we remove the extra fields. We don't need these additional fields in the XPath. We can just give a plain XPath, right? Let's remove that as well. Keep address, and then here let's leave this one for now. I'll explain you what that one is, and let's leave the name and remove everything else. Okay, so when you see this in XPath, if you are aware of XPath, you should already know this. But just in case if you're not familiar with XPath, this one indicates the first record of address, right? So in the XML, we have two records of addresses. And when you have this one at the end of the address parameter, that means this is the first address record. So the value of name from the first record of address under order, this is how it would translate to, right? So this is our first XPath for the name. What I'm going to do is to simplify, rather than doing this individually every time, I'm going to copy the exact details that we used here for the order number, right? And use this notepad, okay, so that we can simply keep on changing these details within this string parameter, right? So for the name, this is the name. Let's copy this here, right? And then the next value needed is for the shipping address. We need the street, right? So shipping address is the first address block, right, in the XML. Let's go there and let's select the street of this shipping address, right? So again, instead of name, now we need to get the value of street, right? So if we just remove this name and add here street, that would give us the street value, right? So let's go ahead and copy this as well. So just add street at the end, and we need 3 more fields for the address. Okay, let's find out it's city, state, and zip. Let's see what's the exact field name here, right? Again, so it's city, state, and zip. So instead of going through each of them individually, now that we know this is how the XPath works, we can just go ahead and simulate that ourselves, right? So city, state, and zip. Okay, and we need the exact same 4 parameters for the billing address, which is the second record, right? So now for the billing record, let's go ahead and let's review this one more time. So for the billing record, this is the second address. The first one is the shipping, the second one is the billing, right? So we just need to replace this one with 2. So this would get the same 4 values from the second address block. So we have all of the XPath that we need. Let's copy them one by one. Copy the first XPath. Let's go to the Logic app. Let's click here at the name, and we need to click on this expression and then copy the XPath. Okay, There we go. For the shipping address, now let's go ahead and copy each of these individually. This is the street. Again, make sure you click at the right place and then click on the expression, right? Okay. Then we have the city. It's highly likely in the beginning you might end up pasting this here, like this, but this won't work, right? You will have to use the expression editor and paste that entire XPath there. Let's go ahead and copy for the state. This is the state. Okay, and then last one is the zip. Let's go ahead and copy the zip. Okay, let's do the exact same thing for the billing address. Let's copy the street. Let's click on it the right place and street expression. Okay, and city. Expression, then state. And then zip. Expression and paste. All right, so we've just created the mapping that's required to send the JSON to the CRM system, right? Let's go ahead and rename both of these because earlier we just had one HTTP, now we have two of them, right? So instead of leaving them 1 and 2, let's give this a name. So you can click on these 3 dots here that would allow you to rename this action, right? Call ERP API, and then this one is going to be call CRM API. Yeah, okay, so the CRM API call shape is configured, and then we need to bring this response at the end of both of these executions, right? So this response should go after both of these executions have been completed, right? And there are multiple ways to do this, but the easier way is to simply add any action next to this, right? And then simply drag this. You see, you don't have to add the action, but when you click on the next step, it would close this loop, right? Let's go ahead and now drag this response from here to the center like this. And then let's close. We don't really need to add any action, right? We just wanted to bring this response after both of these CRM and ERP API call has been executed. So this is done. Let's go ahead and save this. So what this is going to do is whenever the customer orders something, the e-commerce portal would send the order XML to this API. And this API would then call 2 separate APIs, CRM API, and would only map the customer details that the CRM system needs and will send it to the CRM API, and would extract the item details and will send it to the ERP API, right? So we've saved this. Let's go ahead and test and let's see what happens. So in order to test this, we already have this set up in the Postman, where in this Postman, just to remind you, we're using this API endpoint, right? This is the interface API. This is the API of this particular logic app that the e-commerce portal is going to call, right? So I've simply copied this and I'm using it here in this field, right? In this endpoint. And then as a body, I'm using this XML, the order XML that we are supposed to receive from the e-commerce portal. So we are simulating the API call or the message received from the e-commerce portal. So if we go ahead and click on send, and if this is successful, that means we would have both the calls, ERP call and the CRM system call, right? Let's go ahead and click on send. There we go. So we have 200. Okay. So let's go back to the Logic app. Okay. And let's go ahead and open the original Logic app and refresh. And we should have another execution here. Let's click on refresh. There we go. This is the latest execution. And as we can see, it has completed all 4 actions, right? And we've already seen how the ERP system received the data. Let's go ahead and see how the CRM system is receiving the data. So in order to do that, let's go to the test API that we've created, the temporary API for the CRM system that we've created. Okay, this was the temp API. Let's go to the overview and let's refresh. So we should have new run history here. There we go. This is the run history, and this is the run that we've just executed. And let's see what we received. There we go. This is the exit JSON that we created, right? So there is a name, there's a shipping address, right? And there is a billing address. Now, if you see the sequence has been toppled a little bit, right? First we have the billing address, then we have the name, and then we have the shipping address, but that doesn't matter. In the JSON, some systems would, order them or sort them by the alphabetical order, right? So that's okay, and this wouldn't break anything in the CRM side, right? So it is fine, but we've created the exact same JSON data that the CRM needs, and it was successful, right? So this was a taste of the exact same business process, but sending some of the data to another system, right? Let's go ahead and review quickly what we've simply done here. We had created this one interface using this Logic app, where to start with, only the ERP system needed the item quantity data, right? So we created and we sent this ERP system API the item quantity data, and then later on there was another request that the CRM system also needs some of the data from the exact same XML. So we created another branch, and we did the new mapping, and we sent this data that was needed by the CRM system. Now, what are the other ways to do the exact same thing, right? Let's go ahead and open this in the edit mode. And as you can see, the order has also been switched. Now the CRM is on the left and ERP is on the right, but that doesn't matter. That's just the way Logic App is ordering the actions, right? But they both are still in the parallel. Now, what is parallel, right? And what is the other side of parallel? What is the opposite of parallel, right? This is a design pattern. And when you're doing two totally separate tasks which are not dependent on each other, right, you can do both of them in parallel. You can do them at the same time, right? And that's the case in our scenario as well, because the CRM system doesn't care what we send it to the ERP, and the ERP doesn't care what we send to the CRM. They both are not dependent on each other, right? So we executed both of them in parallel. Now, what is the other way to do it? The opposite of parallel is sequential, right? If we were to do this sequentially, how would we do this, right? Let's go ahead and simply drag this CRM API call and put it underneath the ERP API call, right? It's that simple. This is now it's processing in a sequence. So what's going to happen is, as soon as we receive the request, it would first call the ERP API. Then after it successfully completes, it will call the CRM API. And after the CRM call is complete, it would return the response, right? Let's save this and let's see what happens here. Let's go to the Postman. Let's hit send again. Okay, and the exact same thing should have processed. Let's go ahead and refresh the run history. There we go. It executed in the sequence, right? So there is no difference on how it is executed. It's just a design pattern. The ideal design pattern would have been a parallel execution because they both are not related to each other. But if you do this sequential processing, right, then there is a possibility that the if the ERP API call fails, then this would not be executed at all, right? So in order to avoid those kind of discrepancies, you be very careful when you're designing your interface. But just for the testing purpose or for your knowledge purpose, we have just done both the ways. We've also done the parallel and we've also done the sequential processing, right? So I hope this is making sense to you, and I hope you are understanding this, right? I'm going to attach the XMLs and the JSON files in this lecture so that you can use that and you can do this hands on your own, right? There's one more little detail that I've skipped just to keep it simple, right? Because many of you might not be familiar with the Xpath situation. So I've skipped one little detail. Let me quickly touch base upon that, right? And if you are someone who knows Xpath, who has been using Xpath in BizTalk or in your other previous experiences, right, you would easily understand this. But still, let me touch base upon this. So when the requirement was that you need to get the street name when the address type is shipping, what we did is we simply created the XPath where if the address block is first block, get me the street name, right? So if you see, we had this one, right? And again here, this is the XPath that we created, right? This is a little bit of advance, right? And eventually you would understand if you don't understand right away, but that is fine. So this would give us the 123 Maple Street. That's the street of the shipping address. And that was the requirement, right? What we did was we simply added that, okay, get me the street address from the first block of address, right? So this one defines the first block of address. This is not the right way to do it. We did it that way just to keep it simple, right? But when you're working on a real life project, you would want to write an XPath that gets the conditional details and then gets the output, right? Because this address can come second and this billing address can be first, right? In that XML, right? We are right now, we assume that the XML is going to be the exact same sequence, but that's not likely to happen, right? This address first and two can be interchanged, right? So we need to plan for this type of details. So if you need the street where the type is equal to shipping, right, then you need to write this query little bit differently. For example, in this case, I'm going to remove this one, and this is where I would write the condition. Okay, so underneath order, there is address. Here is the order, and then there is addresses. There are two addresses, right? And under this address, there are something called @type. These are called attributes. So let's write the condition where @type equal to shipping. This would give me the conditional address. So it doesn't matter if the shipping address is first or second or third. It would always give me the street details of the address type shipping. Let me change this to billing, and you would see that this value would change. It would return me the billing street address. There we go. right? So this is the right way to do it, but we've kept it simple, and we just use the first block and second block so that you don't have to worry about understanding the XPath right away. But I strongly suggest you follow on the XPath if you don't already know so, right? There you can use Google, and there are plenty of tools that would teach you XPath, right? And you can always, based on the requirement, you can always search and ask for help if needed. But XPath is very important, and you would use that extensively if you are planning to work as an integration developer, right? So I strongly suggest you follow through the XPath and try and use the right XPath always, right? So this was the end of the first real life scenario enhanced, right? The first one we did, we send it to the ERP system, and we enhanced it to send it to the CRM system as well. I hope you're understanding this. Make sure you do this hands-on, use the XML and JSON files attached in those lectures, right? And if you have any questions, or if you don't understand anything, if there are any gaps in your learning, please use the Slack channel and ask there, and somebody would immediately help you out. Thank you very much for sticking around. See you in the next one.